So thanks, Tony and Elizabeth, for agreeing for this interview.
Of course.
You're welcome.
So my first question is, what sort of backgrounds you guys, what sort of work you guys done in your life?
So for me, I have been a registered nurse for nearly 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So I was a registered nurse in 1992, and I've worked in different areas. I've worked in cardiology and oncology, so looking after cancer patients. And now I work in the pre-admissions area where I look after patients who are coming in for operations and things like that. Plus I've been a mother for most of my life since I was 21 and nearly 50 now, so long time. That's pretty
48.
much... Yeah.
She's 48, not
Nearly 50.
Wow.
Nearly 50. So that's pretty much my job history.
And I, I guess went straight from school to university, and I studied extractive metallurgy and chemistry. And I guess I became an extractive metallurgist. I worked in the gold mining sector in Western Australia and the Northern Territory of Australia for a number of years. And then I got into business management at quite a young age. I was about 25. And I've been in senior business management for pretty much the rest of my life, mostly in the mining related supply companies. So I just recently retired at 52 last October 2019.
Wow.
And so my plan now is to try and follow our passion, have an easier life, and get out of the corporate life. And and do more with our business called Food is Medicine Australia,
and help people.
To ultimately to help people. It's not necessarily about making money. It's about trying to help people get healthy,
Recover their health from being sick.
Either prevent chronic disease or recover from chronic disease, which is how I came to know about this way of eating. So.
Okay. So what happened? What made you guys go vegan? Or what happened in life? How it happened?
It's your story.
Okay, so it was me.
Yeah.
So I did get
Tony's
chronically ill when I was 44.
Yeah.
So I'm 52 still now. I'll be 53 this year. And I was 44. So what's that? 8 years ago, I couldn't get out of bed. Essentially, we had a big night of drinking, and I woke up hungover the next day, and I never recovered from that. I thought I was well. A week later, I tried to go to work. I lasted maybe a couple of hours, and I ended up in bed sleeping between 14 and 18 hours a day for about 4 months. I just couldn't function. I had zero energy, my memory was terrible when I was awake, my level of concentration was very poor, some weird symptoms like bad breath and really cold hands and feet. It was quite weird. And I went and saw doctors and many different medical specialists, had many tests, blood tests and other examinations and ultrasounds, and the medical fraternity came up with zero answers for me. So I was very frustrated. I didn't know what was wrong, and I didn't know therefore how I could get well, and no one else could help me. After 4 months, so I had started to see a naturopath maybe a month into this illness period. And the lady helped me a little bit in that she at least listened and understood my symptoms. She'd obviously seen other people like me with similar symptoms. But she proceeded to prescribe me with literally fistfuls of vitamins and mineral tablets and filthy herbal drinks. But she did teach me to try and remove toxins from my diet. So early, probably 4 or 5 or 6 weeks into this illness, I stopped drinking, and then I started to reduce the caffeine coffee, and we pretty much cut out all the processed junk food So but we were still eating meat, dairy and eggs and food with oil and salt and sugar in it at that time. There was no real education about diet. So I ended up being able to go back to work, which became a priority for me because I got paid by the day at that time. So I had 4 months of no pay. That hurt us financially. And so my whole objective in life at that point became to just go to work, which was sitting on my bum most of the day. But I at least showed up, so I got paid. And I would come home and I would sit in my chair and Lizzie would do everything for me, because if I overexerted myself, I ended up being like lethargic and tired again, and I'd end up back in bed for days recovering. So my whole objective was just to go to work and come home again. And my quality of life was extremely poor. And I was in that condition for about 2 years. So in the end, I guess I diagnosed myself with chronic fatigue syndrome. I did a lot of reading when I was alert enough and awake enough to try and understand what was wrong, because no one else had answers for me. And therefore, I was also trying to figure out how to get myself well. And 2 years later, we stumbled. It actually was okay, Lizzie's trying to cut my story down. You'll edit this down. But essentially my sister had bought a blender, a high-powered blender at Vitamix, and she made us a green smoothie, and I think it was the first one I'd ever had in my life. And I liked the idea, so we bought a blender. And the blender book the blender came with a book, and a lady had written a foreword, and she had had chronic fatigue syndrome, and she had at least improved her health by eating raw food. And I thought, oh, this sounds interesting.
Wow.
And unbeknown to me at the time, Lizzie's youngest daughter, Emily, who was probably 16 or so at the time,
17.
had said to her mum 6 months earlier, Mum, I want to be vegan. And her mum, being a registered nurse, all knowledgeable said, you can't possibly do that. How would you get all your nutrients? Anyway, so Emily had been watching YouTube, as many young people do, and she was following a number of young girls on YouTube who were vegan and raw food people as well. And she had a book in her bedroom that I didn't know she had, and she was away when we got the blender, and we were making these dirty smoothies. We had no idea what we were doing. And she said, oh, Mum, get Tony to read my book. So I read her book. It's called the 80-10-10 Diet. It's a very good book. I don't advocate for Dr. Douglas Graham, who wrote the book. I think he has a different agenda. But the book itself is very good. And I read the book, parts of it I read to Lizzie. It just made a lot of sense. And it talked about eating raw plant food. And how so I'm a scientist, so anatomically how we're designed for eating plants, with our teeth design, the length of our digestive tract, and a number of other factors. And it just, as a scientist, it made logical sense to me. So I said to Lizzie, I think I'm going to try this. And Lizzie was horrified and was like, no, no, no. And because we used to go out, before I got sick, we used to go out for meals a lot. And if you just eat raw fruits and salads, you can't really do that. So your social life becomes somewhat inhibited. Anyway, I thought about it for a week or maybe a bit longer, and in the end I said to her one day, I said, look, I've thought about this, I'm going to do it. I don't know anyone that died from eating too many fruits and vegetables. I like fruit. You don't have to do it with me, but I'm going to give this a try and just see what happens. And in the end she decided she would do it with me because it was just easier if we were both doing the same thing. So we did. It was Australia Day, so in 2 days' time, 6 years ago, literally overnight, we went from eating animal products to just fruit and salads.
And vegetables. We ate zucchini.
Yeah, so it was salads.
So at point, is it a vegan diet or is it
It's
just
a vegan
By
diet by
default.
default.
Okay.
So we
yes.
weren't vegan, we just changed to
We
eat
had
plant-based
We
diet.
didn't even know what vegan was
Yeah.
probably at
But
that
we
time.
said we're vegan because we didn't know it wasn't just a diet.
Yeah.
So it was a plant. It was a raw vegan or raw plant food diet, and basically we were having very large fruit smoothies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, with big salads, like the whole salad bowl salad each, for dinner as well. And 3 days later, after eating that way, I felt amazing. Like
Oh, wow.
I had come from this energy deficit where I could barely drag my backside out of bed to I was like jumping out, I was ready to jump out of my skin. I was very energetic. It was like I hadn't been sick. And we have a magnetic exercise bike, and I decided I'm going to get on this thing and I'm going to see how I go, and I either end up in bed or I won't. And so I did 15 kilometres, which I reckon when I was sick at that time, that would have put me in bed for a week recovering from an energy deficit after
Yeah.
doing that. And I could have kept going and going and going. I sweat a lot, but I didn't even huff and puff. And I used to, up until I got sick, even if I went for a walk, I would huff and puff. So, and ever since then, I've just gotten better and better and better. And day 7, I gave up all of my medications for gout, for high cholesterol, and for chronic gastric reflux. Stopped all of those. I stopped all of the naturopath vitamins and minerals, the fistful of supplements I was taking, which was costing a fortune. And I just keep getting better every day. So it's been 6 years almost to the day, and I swear I've never felt so good, and I'm 52 now.
So you were having medicine at that time?
Yes, for many years.
Okay.
Yeah, for many years.
You've been
For
on
gout,
prescription medication.
probably since my early 30s for gout, cholesterol probably mid 30s, so I had high cholesterol for a long time, and gastric reflux I had chronically for a long time. So any, like coffee would trigger it, I love chili and curries and that sort of thing, and that would often trigger really bad gastric reflux. So I was taking they're called PPIs, aren't they? Protein
inhibitors.
proton pump inhibitors, which essentially change the acidic level in your gut. They're very bad news for people, but they prevent gastric reflux, and certainly did the trick for me, but it would have given me some other complication eventually. And who knows, some of those medications may well have been involved in me getting this chronic fatigue in the first place. So yes, I was taking medications and supplements, certainly wasting my money with the supplements, and now I'm medication free and have been for a while.
So you had the cholesterol and this and that previously,
Yeah.
and then after you tried this diet, all of them.
I
just
stopped
came
it.
to-
I actually, in the lead up when I was first sick, early on, one night, so it was really strange. I would be sleeping all day, and then one night I was just like wide awake, and suddenly something thought, wonder if it's these cholesterol tablets. So I was reading on the internet about all the side effects, and one of the main side effects of statin drugs is fatigue.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I thought, well, right, maybe this is to do with it. So I cut it out. I told my doctor, because I was still seeing the doctor fairly regularly at that time, to try and help me, and she was really no help. In the end I just said to her, I'm stopping that tablet, and I'd already stopped it actually. So I stopped that probably, I don't know, a couple of months into being sick. And then the other ones I stopped as soon as I felt well. So day 7 after eating just plants, I stopped everything. And like I say, I've just gotten better and better. So all of the ailments, the cholesterol's heading gradually down to normal.
Well, it is in normal.
I've never had gastric reflux ever since, and I don't take the medication for it, and I don't get gout anymore either. So